isn't that what we do on a daily basis in Washington? I mean, the whole system is based on bending and not following the rules. The founders were wise enough to say that it's not overly rigid. We change the Constitution, we amend the Constitution, sometimes badly, and sometimes we do the right thing. But at least it goes more slowly. But today, our presidents can go to war without a declaration. They can print money when they need it. Deficits don't matter. Our president today says that if Congress doesn't act on certain laws, labor laws, environmental laws, he says, I'll just write an executive order. Those executive orders are unconstitutional. We shouldn't allow executive orders. Then they have signing statements that say that, well, I'm going to follow this half, but not the other half. But what about the principle of the agencies of government writing regulations? Congress carelessly, they go up and they create an agency of government. And then they say, well, the regulations will be written by the agency. And that's law. That's writing law. That shouldn't be right. And then our courts get involved, and when they're called into action, then they write some more law. So in many ways, believe it or not, I put a lot of responsibility on the people. A lot of responsibility. I can't do it in this district. Because it's the people and it's their congressmen. Because then if they would say, this is enough. Now, one or two is very important, and Jimmy's vital there. But the whole problem is, most people don't care. Most people don't care about delivering the prerogatives of the Congress to the executive branch or to the courts. One of the reasons why they said let the president go to war on his own was, well, if it goes badly, he'll be blamed. Well, that's not the way it was supposed to be. I mean, the Constitution is supposed to be the rule of law. So this is the reason it's vital for us as a people to decide what the role of government ought to be. And we had the most unique system ever, and the role of government was to be very minimal. And now we're in a real pickle. Even though on the surface there's still a lot of wealth out there. It looks like we're doing okay, but the wealth that you see is basically it's basically based on debt. But the principle of welfareism is the one that has to be attacked, but not in the sense that, oh, okay, that means take everybody off food stamps and make sure poor people don't get, lifted up. Well, partially that's true, but they present this case, especially liberals, they'll come and say, well, you conservatives, you don't care about the poor people, and we do. We're the only ones that care about, we're the humanitarians, so if people need to eat, they need a house, and they need education, and we're willing to give it to them from the government. As if the government, who is the government? They never admit who the government really is, and that's just somebody else that they have to take the money from. But that gets people's attention. Nobody can really vote against the principle, but it's that principle that starts by helping out the poor. But then, when the system gets out of control, because that principle of redistributing wealth turns into a real game, and it turns out that the people who really get the welfare are the super rich. The people who control Wall Street, the people who control the banking system, the people who control the military-industrial complex. They come in and they lobby, and they get it, and they get most of the benefits. And the best proof of what I'm saying happened after the bubble burst. You know, here we had Community Reinvestment Act, and we had inflation. Print money, take care of the poor, force the banks to make bad loans, give loans to anybody who wanted loans, and then believing the housing prices would go up forever, and they keep borrowing against their mortgages, and it would be a perpetual money machine, perpetual wealth. Of course, that bubble collapsed, as was predicted. So what happened? Bernanke Company came to the rescue. He churned in $15 trillion, but the poor didn't get it, the middle class didn't get it. They lost their jobs, they lost their houses, but he bailed out foreign banks and foreign governments and foreign central banks. So it was designed, to really protect the very wealthy. And that isn't a system. The tragedy of it is, a lot of people will vote for these things for humanitarian instincts. They believe the challenge that, we as conservatives and Constitution, we don't care about the poor. If we don't reverse that, we can't win, because the truth is, the system we have now is biased against the poor. When you inflate and when you destroy a currency, which is systematic, you literally destroy the middle class, and wealth is transferred to those who get to use the money first, the government, the big businesses, and the banks, and the military-industrial complex. And then what do the poor people get? They get high cost of living. Right now, who's getting ripped off? We say we're going to take care of the elderly. It's been going on for 70, 80 years, and you're going to get Social Security. Well, now they don't have enough cash, so what are they doing? They're making sure that there's no cost of living increases for the elderly, and say, oh, there's no inflation. You know, and they turned around and said there'll be no increases for the cost of living, and that's how they're going to balance the budget. But the humanitarian instinct is you can't ever vote against it, so there's a lot of grief over that. But I've come to the conclusion over these many years of studying and trying to understand that if you care about people, and you care about prosperity, and if you care about a maximum amount of wealth for a free society, you have to have free markets and sound money and limited government, and more people will be taken care of, and there will be elections.
Yeah!
Confidence in it, and that is why we have to make this effort. That is why a whole generation of people have to understand this. We all have to understand it, because you have to give cover to your representatives. If they understand it and they don't vote for the bailouts, you know, then of course, you know, they can get in trouble and their words. So people have to know, you know, what's going on. Now, Jimmy has told a story about when the administration was trying to talk him into voting for the war. And he went down and they had these briefings. And he quizzed them a lot, and he wasn't convinced. And he really thought independently, like he's supposed to do. A congressman is supposed to represent the people and do some thinking and make his best judgment. But what he was doing there actually was looking for truth. And he came to a conclusion, obviously, because if he believed everything they told him, he couldn't possibly have voted against it. So we have a truth problem in this country. The bigger a government, the more authoritarian a government is, the more lies they tell us.
Yeah.
They tell us lies about foreign policy. The war drums are beating again. They're trying to tell us that the North Koreans are going to launch a missile and bomb the United States. It's preposterous, you know, and we don't need more of that. All that has done is generate more spending in the military, even though they're tinkering around with the military budget. Right now, the military-industrial complex is going to get a lot more money because the North Koreans are coming. And it's just you know, foolish. And that's why we have to look for the truth. On the early years, I would go to some of these briefings where national security experts, CIA experts, would come in, and we have top secret clearance to go and get the scoop. And I went there a couple times. And this is nothing more than propaganda. They're not telling me the truth. And besides, I wouldn't go back because I could read about it in the paper the next day anyway. And then I didn't have to worry about ever saying anything that they told me. But governments will lie to us, and that is very unfortunate. They lied to us about foreign policy, but what about economic policy? What do they tell us about the CPI? They're changing the CPI so they don't have to pay increases for more Social Security beneficiaries. But they lie about unemployment. There's a free market economist by the name of John Williams, and he uses statistics that were available, the same statistics calculations that he did 20, 30 years ago. And when you do that, the CPI is going up at 9%. And if you look at unemployment, if he counts everybody that's unemployed, if you drop out of the workforce, they don't count you anymore. You're a non-person. So the unemployment rate is actually over 20%. That's why people feel worse than the government tells us we're supposed to feel. So, it's really the truth that we want to hear. And I have so many things to talk about, and when I talk to young people, I thought, well, they're going to get depressed over this, but they never seem to be. And I'm trying to figure this out because I say the economy is bad. You're getting ready to get out of college. You paid a lot of money, and you have a lot of debt, and you don't have a job. This is a mess. You think, well, I'm going to give up, or I'm going to leave the country, or something. No, they get energized because I don't think they ever hear the truth. I think about it in medicine. If you have somebody that's overdoing drugs or something, or if you've heard of people in alcohol and they knew they have to get off, they don't get off until they finally sort of hit the bottom and they realize it. And realizing that all of a sudden can turn around the optimist and say, I admit the truth, there is a problem, we're going to do this about it, and there are answers. Yes, we're in a big mess, but there are answers. Matter of fact, in spite of all the economic problems, the attack on our civil liberties, and this endless wars, and all this debt, I'm really pretty optimistic about what's going on. Because there's something different now. In the last 5 years, it's just been gigantic. It's really gotten me excited. Young people sometimes tell me I get them energized and interested and excited about all this. But they give me a lot of encouragement, too, because they're listening and paying attention. I sometimes have young people come into my office. They're 14 years old, and they'll come in and they'll talk to me about all the books they read on the Federal Reserve. I didn't even know it existed when I was 14.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that going on. So that is positive. Now, the other thing is I believe this thing is major. I am convinced that the economic crisis can be very, very huge. The destruction of a currency, you can see this in smaller countries, how devastating it is. But a dollar is big time because the world currency and the bubble is bigger than ever, the bond bubble and the dollar bubble, and right now back to stock bubbles. So this can be, very, very big. But the Soviet system collapsed. That was the greatest political event of the 20th century. The fact that I think back in the 60s when I was drafted during the Cuban crisis, 30,000 nuclear missiles and in Cuba, and I keep thinking, look at the noise going on about one country in the Middle East on what we have to do and attack another country. They don't even have one. We're worried about one bomb they might get someday. And yet the Soviets had 30,000 of them. But their system collapsed because it was a non-viable system. Mises, the great Austrian economist, declared that in 1912. He said socialism can't work, has no pricing structure, and price controls won't work. It'll distort the market, and that's what we have, gross distortion.